The year was 3245 CE, more than a millennium after Earth had been integrated into the Interplanetary Alliance. Humanity had spread across the stars, bringing with them not only their technology and culture, but also their unique approach to warfare and medicine. Among the various doctrines established by the Alliance, none was more sacred than the inviolability principle for medical units. This principle, born from centuries of interstellar conflicts, dictated that medical personnel were to be protected at all costs, even by enemy forces. Major Trian Kana commanded the Neptune Medical Unit, a specialized division known for its unconventional approach to battlefield medicine. She wasn't your typical military doctor, standing at just under 6 feet, with jet black hair always tied in a practical bun. Her most striking feature wasn't her appearance, but her uncanny ability to transform ordinary objects into life-saving medical tools. Her reputation preceded her across the front lines of Aurelia 9, a critical planet where the Red Empire and the Interplanetary Alliance had been locked in brutal combat for nearly 3 years. Aurelia 9, once a thriving mining colony, had become a wasteland of craters and abandoned settlements. Its strategic position made it a vital holding for both factions, and neither was willing to surrender an inch of territory. The planet's harsh environment, with its toxic dust storms and radiation pockets, only added to the challenges faced by those stationed there. "Major, we've got incoming wounded." Lieutenant Mirak Sal's voice crackled through the comm system. The young doctor had been assigned to Kana's unit fresh out of the Alliance Medical Academy, and his traditional approach to medicine often clashed with Kana's improvisational techniques. "How many?" Kana asked, already gathering her portable medkit, a white and red container bearing the universal symbol of medical care. 3 confirmed, possibly more. Scout team ran into a Red Empire ambush near Vulcum 3 exploration outpost. Kana nodded grimly. The Vulcum 3 outpost was deep in contested territory, a former scientific facility that had been converted into a military stronghold by the Red Empire. For Alliance soldiers to be ambushed there meant they were either on a reconnaissance mission or attempting to sabotage enemy operations. Either way, getting to them would be dangerous. "Prep the evac shuttle," she ordered, slinging her medkit over her shoulder. "And make sure we have extra plasma substitutes. If they're coming from Vulcum 3, they've likely been exposed to the radiation pockets." As the medical team scrambled to prepare for the incoming casualties, Kana studied the tactical display showing the terrain between their position and the ambush site. The direct route would take them through an active battlefield, but the alternative path would add precious minutes to their journey, minutes the wounded soldiers might not have. "We're taking Route Alpha," she announced, pointing to the more dangerous path. "Lieutenant Vun, I want air support the entire way. If we get shot down because you were distracted by something shiny, I'll personally make sure your next assignment is cleaning bedpans on the outer colonies." Lieutenant Laurie Vun, the unit's dedicated pilot, grinned despite the threat. "Wouldn't dream of letting you down, Major. Besides, I've seen what you can do with a bedpan. Not eager to be on the receiving end." The team loaded into the medical shuttle, a sleek craft designed for speed rather than combat. Its white and red exterior marked it as a medical vehicle, according to interstellar conventions. But Kana knew from experience that the Red Empire didn't always honor such distinctions. As they approached the coordinates of the ambush, the shuttle's sensors detected movement below. "Multiple heat signatures," Vun reported. "Some are fading." "Put us down there," Kana ordered, pointing to a relatively flat area about 50 meters from the heat signatures. "And keep the engines hot. We might need to leave in a hurry." The shuttle descended through a cloud of dust, its landing struts extending to touch the rocky surface of Aurelia 9. Before the craft had fully settled, Kana was already at the door, medkit in hand, preparing to disembark. What greeted them was a scene of carnage. The Alliance scout team had been caught in a crossfire between their position and a Red Empire patrol. Two soldiers lay motionless on the ground, while a third dragged himself toward the meager cover provided by a burned-out vehicle. In the distance, the distinctive red armor of Empire troops could be seen advancing cautiously. "Lieutenant Sal, with me," Kana barked, rushing toward the wounded soldier. "Vun, provide cover if needed, but do not engage unless fired upon." As they reached the injured soldier, Kana quickly assessed his wounds: multiple plasma burns across his torso, a shattered left femur, and signs of internal bleeding. Without proper medical facilities, his chances were slim. "I can't feel my legs," the soldier gasped, his face pale with shock and blood loss. "That's because I haven't fixed them yet," Kana replied, already opening her medkit. She pulled out a scanner and ran it over the soldier's body, confirming her initial diagnosis. "Lieutenant, prepare a nanofoam injection. We need to stabilize the internal bleeding before we move him." Sal hesitated. "Major, the standard protocol for field treatment doesn't recommend nanofoam for—" "I'm aware of the protocol, Lieutenant," Kana cut him off. "I'm also aware that if we don't stop this bleeding now, this soldier won't make it back to the shuttle. Nanofoam. Now." As Sal prepared the injection, Kana turned her attention to the soldier's shattered femur. The bone had splintered in multiple places, piercing through the surrounding muscle tissue. Standard procedure would be to immobilize it and rush the patient to surgery. But they were at least 20 minutes from the nearest medical facility. 20 minutes this soldier didn't have. Making a quick decision, Kana reached into her kit and pulled out a packet of synthetic neural filaments and a container of what appeared to be metallic foam. "This is going to hurt," she warned the soldier, "but it will keep you alive until we can get you to proper facilities." Without waiting for a response, she tore open the packet and began threading the filaments along the soldier's leg, creating a temporary neural bypass around the damaged tissue. Then, using the metallic foam, an experimental substance designed for emergency structural repairs, she created a makeshift external support for the shattered bone. What are you doing?" the soldier gasped through gritted teeth. "Improvising," Kana replied, her hands now covered in the soldier's blood as she worked. "The filaments will trick your nerves into thinking the pathways are intact, reducing the pain signals. The foam will support the bone fragments until we can get you to surgery." As she worked, she became aware of movement in her peripheral vision. The Red Empire troops had spotted them and were approaching cautiously, weapons raised. Kana continued her work, trusting Vun to handle the situation according to protocol, display medical insignia, announce their status as medical personnel, and request safe passage as per interstellar conventions. But something unexpected happened. As one of the Red Empire soldiers raised a scope to his eyes and got a clear view of Kana, with her distinctive white and red medkit and blood-covered hands, his posture changed dramatically. He lowered his weapon and appeared to be speaking urgently into his communication device. Within moments, the entire Red Empire patrol began to fall back, retreating from their position despite having a clear tactical advantage. "Major," Vun called out, confusion evident in his voice. "They're retreating. All of them." Kana barely looked up from her work. "Good. Less distraction. Now help me get this soldier to the shuttle. And check those other two. They might still be alive." As they transported the wounded back to their craft, Kana remained puzzled by the Red Empire's behavior. It wasn't the first time she'd noticed enemy forces withdrawing when they spotted her medical team, but it was the first time she'd seen them retreat so precipitously, abandoning what would have been an easy victory. Little did she know that at that very moment, an urgent message was being transmitted through Red Empire communication channels. Human medical personnel detected at coordinates 457293. White-red medkit. Blood on hands. Retreat immediately. Repeat. Do not engage human medics. Back at the Alliance medical base, Kana's unorthodox treatment had saved the soldier's life, though not without raising eyebrows among the more traditionally trained medical staff. "You used structural repair foam as a bone splint?" the base's chief medical officer questioned incredulously. "That material isn't approved for biological applications." "Major, the soldier is alive, isn't he?" Kana countered. "Sometimes you have to work with what you have, not what the manual says you should have." The incident might have been forgotten, just another day on the front lines of an interminable war, if not for what happened 3 weeks later at the McDonnell Plains engagement. The McDonnell Plains, a vast stretch of relatively flat terrain on Aurelia 9's northern continent, had become a focal point of the conflict. The Alliance had established a forward operating base there, while the Red Empire had positioned artillery units on the surrounding highlands. The resulting standoff had lasted for weeks, with neither side gaining a significant advantage. Kana's Neptune Medical Unit had been deployed to support the Alliance forces, setting up a field hospital in a repurposed radiation monitoring bunker. The thick concrete walls provided protection from enemy fire, but the bunker's original purpose meant it was riddled with sensors and equipment that complicated their medical operations. The situation deteriorated rapidly when the Red Empire launched a surprise offensive, targeting the Alliance's command structure with precision strikes. Within hours, the forward operating base was in chaos. Communication lines were severed, and Kana's medical unit found itself cut off from the main Alliance forces. "Status report," Kana demanded, as wounded soldiers continued to stream into their makeshift hospital. "We're at capacity, Major," Lieutenant Saul replied, his uniform stained with blood and antiseptic solutions. "Medical supplies are running low, especially pain management and infection control, and the radiation levels in sections 3 and 4 are rising. The shielding must have been damaged in the bombardment." Kana surveyed the crowded bunker. Dozens of wounded soldiers lay on makeshift beds, their groans echoing off the concrete walls. Without supplies, and with rising radiation levels, their situation was dire. "What about evacuation?" she asked. Lieutenant Vun shook his head. "The Empire has air superiority right now. Any shuttle we send up would be shot down immediately." Kana took a deep breath, considering their options. "All right. First, we need to deal with the radiation. Without proper decontamination equipment, we'll all be dead within days." She moved through the bunker, examining the monitoring equipment that had been installed when the structure served as a radiation control station. Most of it was outdated or damaged, but the basic components were still intact. "Lieutenant Saul, help me with this," she said, pointing to a bank of sensors embedded in one of the walls. "We're going to repurpose these Level 2 sensing arrays into a makeshift gamma-ray filter." Sal looked skeptical. "Major, these are monitoring devices, not filtration systems." "Everything is a filtration system if you're desperate enough," Kana replied, already working to dismantle the array. "The sensing plates in these devices are designed to detect radiation particles. If we reverse the polarity and connect them to the ventilation system, they'll attract and hold the particles instead of just detecting them." It was an outrageous plan, but with few alternatives. Sal joined in the effort. Using tools from their medical kits and parts, salvaged from damaged equipment, they constructed a crude but functional radiation filter. By the third day of their isolation, they had managed to reduce the radiation levels to tolerable limits. But their problems were far from over. The wounded continued to suffer, and their medical supplies were dwindling rapidly. One soldier in particular, a young corporal with extensive burns across his torso, was deteriorating quickly. His synthetic skin grafts were failing, and without replacement tissue, infection would soon set in. "We need to improvise again," Kana announced, examining the corporal's wounds. "Find me the most intact piece of that damaged tank outside. The armor plating should be made of a composite material we can work with." "You want to use tank armor as skin grafts?" Sal asked incredulously. "Not the armor itself," Kana explained. "But the inner lining contains synthetic fibers, similar to what we use in temporary grafts. If we can extract those fibers and treat them with the right solution. She rummaged through her medkit, pulling out various vials and instruments. While Sal retrieved the requested materials, Kana prepared the corporal for the procedure. Using a portable sterilization field, one of their few remaining functional medical devices, she created a clean workspace around the soldier's bed. What followed was a masterclass in improvisational medicine. Using components extracted from the tank's internal systems, Kana created a temporary tissue scaffold. Then, applying a mixture of antiseptic solution and cellular growth promoters from her dwindling supplies, she coaxed the soldier's own cells to begin colonizing the scaffold. Outside the bunker, Red Empire forces had established observation posts to monitor the trapped Alliance personnel. Through their surveillance cameras, they watched in growing horror as Kana performed her makeshift surgery, using what appeared to be scavenged mechanical parts to heal grievous wounds. "What is she doing?" one Empire observer asked, his voice tight with disbelief as he watched the feed. "Using parts from our destroyed tank to repair human tissue," his superior replied, his tone a mixture of awe and revulsion. "This is why the High Command issued the retreat order. Human medics. They're not like our automated medical systems. They improvise, they adapt, and they do it with whatever materials are at hand." The observer swallowed hard. "Even parts of our own weapons." "Especially parts of our own weapons," the superior confirmed. "There are reports from the Eastern Front of a human medic who used the cooling system from one of our fallen mechs to perform dialysis on 3 soldiers at once. Another converted the focusing crystal from a captured laser rifle into a surgical cutting tool." As they spoke, the surveillance feed showed Kana finishing her procedure, her hands covered in blood and mechanical lubricant. The soldier's wounds now covered with a strange, metallic-looking patch that pulsed slightly with each heartbeat. "Order the units to fall back," the superior commanded suddenly. "Widen the perimeter around the bunker." "Sir, our orders were to maintain the siege until—" "I said fall back," the superior snapped. "I won't have my battalion anywhere near that bunker when she runs out of medical supplies and starts looking at our equipment as potential replacements." The Red Empire's fears were not unfounded. By the 5th day of their isolation, Kana had performed dozens of similar procedures, converting everything from communication equipment to ventilation components into medical tools and treatments. Her reputation spread among the Empire forces, whispered in fearful tones. "If you see a human with a medkit and blood on their hands, retreat immediately." On the 6th day, Lieutenant Vun managed to repair their communication equipment enough to send a brief distress signal to Alliance forces. The response came not in the form of ground troops, but as a high-altitude supply drop, a desperate gamble by the Alliance to provide the trapped medical unit with the resources they needed to survive. "They're dropping supplies at coordinates about 2 kilometers northeast of our position," Vun reported, studying the cracked display of their communication console. "But the Empire has the entire area locked down. There's no way to reach them without being seen." Kana considered their options. The supplies would contain critical medical equipment and fresh medications, resources that could save dozens of lives. But retrieving them meant crossing active enemy territory. "I'll go," she decided, "alone." "Major, that's suicide," Sal protested. "The Empire has snipers positioned on every elevated position in a 3-kilometer radius. They also have standing orders to retreat if they spot me," Kana replied, reaching for her medkit. "Orders that seem to be particularly emphatic if I have blood on my hands." She glanced down at her uniform, which was already stained with the evidence of her recent surgeries. "You're going to use their fear against them," Vun realized, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Exactly," Kana confirmed. "I'm going to walk right through their lines, collect those supplies, and walk back. And they're going to let me do it because they're more afraid of what I might do with their equipment than they are of disobeying their orders to maintain the siege." It was a bold plan, bordering on reckless. But with their supplies critically low and more wounded arriving every hour, They had few alternatives. As night fell, Kana slipped out of the bunker, her white and red medical coat visible even in the darkness, her medkit prominently displayed on her hip. She moved with purpose, not attempting to hide her presence, heading directly toward the coordinates of the supply drop. Through thermal scopes and night vision goggles, Red Empire soldiers watched her progress. Communication chatter increased as she approached their positions, urgent whispers passing between checkpoints. "It's her, the medic from the bunker." "She's heading for the supply drop." "Should we engage?" "No. Standing orders. Fall back if you see a human medic with a medkit." "But she's alone, completely exposed." "Did you see what she did to Corvin's squad? Turned their own weapons against them, using parts to heal her people. Do you want to be next?" One by one, Empire positions fell silent as soldiers retreated from Kana's path, creating an eerie corridor through what should have been heavily defended territory. Some watched from a distance, weapons lowered as she reached the supply containers, methodically sorted through their contents, and began the journey back to the bunker. Not a single shot was fired. When Kana returned to the medical bunker, her arms laden with supplies, the Alliance soldiers who had been defending the perimeter stared in disbelief. "How did you?" one began. Kana simply smiled grimly. "Sometimes the most effective weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. Sometimes it's the fear of what your enemy might do with your own technology." The supplies bought them time. Time for the Alliance to mount a proper rescue operation, breaking through the Empire's lines and evacuating the medical unit and all surviving patients. But the legend of Major Trian Kana, the medic who walked unharmed through enemy territory, only grew stronger. Throughout the Interplanetary Alliance, stories of Kana's exploits became a source of inspiration. Medical cadets studied her improvisational techniques, learning to see potential in the most unlikely materials. Military strategists analyzed the psychological impact her reputation had on enemy forces, seeking ways to replicate that advantage. Within the Red Empire, a different kind of doctrine emerged. Soldiers were trained to recognize Alliance medical insignia and equipment, with special emphasis placed on identifying human medics. Standing orders were unambiguous. If you encounter a human with a medkit and blood on their hands, disengage immediately and report the sighting. Do not, under any circumstances, allow them access to Empire technology or equipment. For Kana herself, the growing mythology around her abilities created a complex ethical dilemma. Her primary duty was to save lives, Alliance lives, primarily, but she had also treated Empire soldiers when circumstances permitted. Yet she was increasingly being viewed as a weapon, a psychological deterrent whose very presence could alter the dynamics of a battlefield. "They're calling you the frontline spirit now," Lieutenant Vun informed her one evening, as they prepared for yet another deployment. "The brass is starting to factor your presence into their strategic planning. They're actually routing some operations, specifically to include your medical unit, just for the effect it has on Empire morale." Kana frowned, discomforted by the implications. "I'm a doctor, not a psychological warfare specialist. My job is to keep our people alive, not to terrorize the enemy." "Can it be both?" Vun asked. "If the Empire retreats rather than faces you, doesn't that save lives on both sides?" It was a question Kana couldn't easily answer. The line between medical ethics and military necessity had always been blurry in wartime. But her situation seemed to be creating an entirely new category of ethical considerations. Her internal conflict was put to the test 3 months later, during what would become known as the Battle of Xenon Crater. Xenon Crater, a massive impact site near Aurelia 9's equator, had become the focal point of the war. The Alliance had established a network of underground facilities within the crater walls, using the natural protection provided by the terrain to shield their operations from Empire detection. The Empire, in turn, had positioned their most advanced weaponry around the crater's rim, attempting to seal off the Alliance forces inside. The resulting standoff had lasted for weeks, with neither side gaining a decisive advantage. That changed when the Empire deployed a new weapon, a bioengineered pathogen designed to incapacitate Alliance troops without damaging the infrastructure they sought to capture. The attack came without warning. Alliance sentries reported a strange mist descending into the crater, followed by widespread respiratory distress among exposed personnel. Within hours, hundreds of soldiers were incapacitated, their lungs filling with fluid as the pathogen attacked their pulmonary systems. Kana's Neptune medical unit was deployed immediately, rushing into the contaminated zone with whatever protective equipment they could muster. But the scale of the crisis quickly overwhelmed their resources. "We've got over 300 affected personnel," Lieutenant Saul reported, his voice muffled by his respirator mask. "The pathogen seems designed to target specific proteins in human lung tissue. Our standard antivirals aren't having any effect." Kana studied the medical readouts from the nearest patients, her mind racing. "It's not just attacking the lungs," she realized. "Look at these blood samples. The pathogen is altering the oxygen-carrying capacity of the hemoglobin. That's why the respirators aren't helping. Even if we get oxygen into their lungs, it's not being properly transported to the tissues." "What's the treatment protocol for something like this?" Sal asked. Kana shook her head grimly. "There isn't one. This is a custom-engineered bioweapon. We'd need to develop a specific countermeasure, and that would take weeks in a proper research facility." "Weeks we don't have," Vun added, gesturing to the patients surrounding them. "Most of these people will be dead in hours without treatment." Kana fell silent, her gaze moving around the underground facility. Unlike the radiation bunker at McDonnell Plains, this structure hadn't been designed for scientific purposes. It was primarily a military installation, with few sophisticated systems she could repurpose for medical use. But there was one thing the Alliance had in abundance at Xenon Crater: captured Empire technology. As part of their strategy, Alliance forces had been systematically collecting and analyzing Empire equipment, seeking weaknesses to exploit. "Lieutenant Vun," Kana said suddenly, "I need access to the technology assessment lab. Specifically, I need to see any Empire medical equipment they've captured." Vun looked surprised. "You think the Empire has a treatment for their own bioweapon?" "Not directly," Kana replied. "But their approach to medicine is fundamentally different from ours. They rely heavily on automated systems and nanotechnology. If we can understand how their medical tech interfaces with biological systems, we might be able to repurpose it to counter this pathogen." The technology assessment lab was a chaotic space, filled with disassembled Empire devices and the tools used to analyze them. Kana moved through the collection purposefully, examining each piece with a critical eye. "Here," she said finally, pulling a small, cylindrical device from a shelf. "This is an Empire tissue regenerator. They use them for rapid field treatment of injuries." Sal examined the device skeptically. "How does a tissue regenerator help us against a respiratory pathogen?" "It's not the regenerator itself that interests me," Kana explained, already working to disassemble the device. "It's the targeting system. Empire medicine relies on nanoscale robots to identify and repair damaged tissue. Those robots are programmed to recognize specific biological markers. If we can reprogram them to target this pathogen instead." It was a desperate plan, fraught with risks. The Empire's nanotechnology was incompatible with Alliance systems, and reprogramming it would require expertise none of them possessed. But with hundreds of lives hanging in the balance, Kana was willing to attempt the impossible. For the next 17 hours, she worked without rest, disassembling multiple Empire medical devices and extracting their core components. Using the limited diagnostic equipment available in the underground facility, she analyzed the structure of the pathogen affecting their troops, identifying key proteins that could serve as targets for the reprogrammed nanobots. Lieutenant Sal assisted, his initial skepticism giving way to cautious hope as Kana's plan began to take shape. Together, They modified an Empire tissue scanner to serve as a programming interface for the nanobots, using a damaged Alliance communication array to boost its signal strength. This goes against every safety protocol in the book, Sal noted, as they prepared to test their creation on a sample of infected blood. We're essentially creating a hybrid technology that neither side fully understands. Sometimes survival requires breaking the rules, Kana replied, initiating the test sequence. Besides, I'm counting on the Empire's thoroughness. Their medical systems are designed with multiple fail-safes to prevent harm to biological tissue. We're just redirecting that protection. The test was successful. The reprogrammed nanobots identified and neutralized the pathogen in the blood sample. But scaling up their solution to treat hundreds of infected soldiers presented a new challenge. They had limited numbers of nanobots extracted from the captured devices, and no way to manufacture more. We'll have to be strategic, Kana decided. Start with the most severely affected patients. Once the nanobots have cleared the pathogen from their systems, we can retrieve and reprogram them for the next group. It was a meticulous process, requiring precision and patience. Each treatment took approximately 40 minutes, with another 20 required to retrieve and reprogram the nanobots for the next patient. At that rate, treating all the infected would take days, time many of them didn't have. As Kana worked to save as many as possible, the broader battle for Xenon Crater continued to rage. The Empire, emboldened by the success of their biological attack, launched a ground assault against the weakened Alliance defenses. Fighting spilled into the underground complex, with Empire troops pushing ever closer to the medical areas. We need to accelerate the treatment process, Kana announced, after receiving reports of the Empire's advance. Lieutenant Saul, help me set up a parallel processing system. If we can treat multiple patients simultaneously, we might be able to stay ahead of the infection's progression. Using components salvaged from the facility's environmental control systems, they constructed a network of treatment stations, each capable of managing the nanobot therapy for one patient. It was a crude setup, but it allowed them to increase their treatment capacity from 1 to 6 patients at a time. Then, disaster struck. A direct hit from an Empire bunker, penetrating missile collapsed part of the facility, cutting off power to the medical section and trapping Kana, Saul, and 17 critically ill patients in an isolated pocket of the complex. Status report, Kana demanded, as emergency lighting flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the makeshift hospital. Power's out. Primary and backup systems, Sal replied, checking the diagnostic equipment. The nanobot programming interface is offline. Life support is running on emergency cells, but they won't last more than a few hours. Kana surveyed their situation grimly. Without power, they couldn't continue the nanobot treatments. Without treatments, the 17 patients would die, and based on the sounds of combat echoing through the facility, Empire forces would reach their position before any Alliance rescue could be mounted. We have 2 priorities, she decided. Keep these patients alive, and get that treatment system back online. Everything else is secondary. With their medical equipment disabled by the power loss, Kana once again turned to improvisation. Using the emergency lighting panels as a power source, she created a rudimentary electrical system to run the most critical monitoring devices. For patients struggling to breathe, she repurposed maintenance robot control cables into makeshift oxygen delivery tubes, connecting them to the facility's backup air supply. But the biggest challenge remained the nanobot programming interface. Without it, they couldn't adapt the nanobots to target the pathogen, rendering their primary treatment useless. The interface is just a specialized computer, Kana reasoned, examining the damaged device. We don't need the exact same hardware, just something that can communicate with the nanobots on the right frequency. Her gaze fell on a damaged Empire infiltration drone that had been brought into the medical section for analysis. Its cognitive processor, the AI core that allowed it to make basic tactical decisions, remained intact. That processor is designed to interface with Empire systems, she realized, including their nanotechnology, if we can repurpose it. What followed was perhaps Kana's most audacious improvisation yet. Using surgical tools as makeshift electronics equipment, she extracted the cognitive processor from the drone and connected it to their nanobot containment unit. Then, using a manual data entry system cobbled together from medical scanners and diagnostic tools, she painstakingly reprogrammed the processor to serve as a control interface for the nanobots. "This is either brilliant or insane," Sal commented, as they prepared to test their creation on a patient whose condition was deteriorating rapidly. "Sometimes those are the same thing," Kana replied, initiating the treatment sequence. To their amazement, it worked. The repurposed processor successfully communicated with the nanobots, directing them to target the pathogen infecting the patient's lungs. Within minutes, the patient's oxygen saturation levels began to improve. They had just begun treating the second patient when Empire forces breached the final barrier, separating them from the medical section. Armored soldiers poured into the corridor outside, their weapons raised, searching for Alliance personnel. Kana continued her work, focusing on saving her patients even as the sounds of combat drew nearer. She had just finished connecting a third patient to their improvised treatment system when the door to the medical section burst open. An Empire Special Forces team stood in the doorway, their weapons trained on the medical personnel. For a moment, time seemed to suspend as the soldiers took in the scene before them. Kana, standing amidst critically ill patients, her white and red medical coat stained with blood, one hand holding a modified medical scanner, the other clutching an IV tube repurposed from Empire technology. Recognition dawned in the lead soldier's eyes. "It's her," he whispered, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "The medic from McDonnell Plains." Kana met his gaze steadily, not pausing in her work. "These patients need treatment," she said simply. "Are you going to shoot a doctor while she's saving lives?" The Empire soldiers hesitated, their weapons still raised, but their resolve visibly wavering. They had been briefed about Alliance medical personnel, particularly this woman, who could turn everyday objects, even Empire technology, into life-saving medical tools. The lead soldier took a half-step backward. "All units," he said into his communication device, his voice trembling slightly. "Fall back immediately. Repeat, full retreat from Section 7. We have confirmed presence of human medical personnel with field equipment." Within moments, the Empire forces were withdrawing, abandoning their hard-won position rather than confronting Kana and her improvised medical technology. Their retreat bought precious time for Kana and Saul to treat the remaining patients, and time for Alliance forces to regroup and mount a counteroffensive. By the time Alliance reinforcements reached the medical section, 14 of the 17 critical patients had been stabilized. The remaining 3 were receiving treatment, their conditions improving steadily under Kana's care. "Major," the Alliance commander greeted her, surveying the makeshift medical setup with undisguised awe. "We received reports that an Empire Special Forces team had breached this section. How did you hold them off?" Kana smiled tiredly, her hands still working to adjust a treatment parameter. "I didn't have to. They took one look and retreated." "They retreated from a medical unit?" "From a human with a medkit and blood on her hands," Kana corrected. "Apparently, that's all it takes these days." The commander shook his head in amazement. "Your reputation precedes you, Major. There are rumors spreading through the Empire ranks that human medics can turn any piece of technology, even their own weapons, into medical devices. They're calling it medical alchemy." "It's not alchemy," Kana replied. "It's just adaptation, seeing the potential in what's available, rather than lamenting what isn't." In the aftermath of the Xenon crater battle, Kana's actions were formally recognized by the Interplanetary Alliance. She was awarded the Supreme Medical Cross, the highest honor bestowed upon medical personnel, and given the title Frontline Spirit. a name that had already been circulating unofficially among Alliance troops. More significantly, the Alliance's approach to combat medicine began to shift. Training programs were established to teach Kana's improvisational techniques to new medical officers, emphasizing creativity and adaptation over rigid adherence to established protocols. Field medics were equipped with specialized tools designed for maximum versatility, allowing them to repurpose available materials into medical equipment. Within the Red Empire, a more dramatic change took place. The High Command issued a standing order that was unprecedented in the history of interstellar warfare. Upon visual confirmation of human medical personnel with field equipment, all units must immediately disengage and retreat to a minimum safe distance of 1 kilometer. Under no circumstances are Empire forces to engage in combat operations in the vicinity of human medics. The order was accompanied by a classified briefing document that detailed Kana's exploits, emphasizing her ability to convert Empire technology into medical tools. Special attention was given to the psychological impact of seeing a human medic working with blood-covered hands, an image that had become synonymous with the uncanny adaptability that the Empire found so disturbing. For Kana herself, the aftermath of Xenon Crater brought both recognition and introspection. As she stood on the observation deck of the Neptune medical transport ship, watching Aurelia 9 recede into the distance, she considered the strange turn her career had taken. "You know," Lieutenant Vun said, joining her at the viewport, "there's talk of promoting you to colonel and giving you command of the entire medical division. The brass is impressed with your results." Kana shook her head slightly. "I'm not an administrator, Laurie. I belong in the field, where I can do the most good." "You do more than good out there," Vun pointed out. "You've become a strategic asset. The Empire literally runs away when they see you coming." "Is that what I am now? A weapon?" Kana asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "When I joined the medical corps, I swore an oath to heal, not to terrify." Vun considered her words carefully. "I think you're both, and neither. You're a doctor who refuses to accept limitations, who sees possibilities where others see only obstacles. That's inspiring to our forces and terrifying to the Empire." He paused, then added, "But, most importantly, you save lives. Everything else is just a side effect." Kana nodded slowly, finding some comfort in his perspective. "The war isn't over," she said, her gaze returning to the diminishing image of Aurelia 9. "There will be more battles, more wounded, more impossible situations." "And you'll face them as you always have," Vun replied confidently. "One improvisation at a time." As the ship accelerated toward its next destination, Kana reflected on the strange power she now wielded. Not the power to destroy, but the power to heal in ways that defied convention and expectation. It was a power born of necessity and honed through countless desperate situations, a testament to human ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. The Red Empire feared her, not because of her destructive capability, but because she represented something their highly regimented, technology-dependent society struggled to comprehend: the unpredictable creativity of human adaptation. In their eyes, a human with a medkit and blood on their hands wasn't just a doctor. They were a force of nature, capable of transforming the very weapons designed to kill them into tools of healing. And perhaps, Kana thought, that transformation, from destruction to healing, from death to life, was the most powerful weapon of all in a war that had gone on far too long. Maybe the fear she inspired in enemy forces was just the beginning of a larger change, a recognition that even in the depths of conflict, the human drive to preserve life remained stronger than the impulse to take it. With that thought, she turned away from the viewport and headed back to the medical bay. There was work to be done, lives to be saved, and innovations yet to be discovered. The legend of the medic with blood on her hands would continue to grow, a beacon of hope for allies and a source of dread for enemies. But for Major Triancana, it remained, first and foremost, a duty to heal by any means necessary.